Hey baby, just got out the shower, thought me and you could have some fun. Babe? Honey? Baby? Babe!
Your mount ignores your call within the maw. What's up gamers, it is Tresap Jake here with yet another video. Now if you follow me on Twitter you will know that my alt for Shadowlands that I'm going to be doing PvE, PvP with is going to be an Unholy Death Knight. I absolutely love this class. It was my first level 80 back in Wrath, so I thought I'd bring it back and I've been having a lot of fun. So if you've been following me on Twitter you would know this. If you aren't following me on Twitter, make sure you do because I'm kind of funny sometimes, so make sure you give us a follow there. I'm going to be breaking down my initial thoughts on the Unholy Death Knight class at the minute in PvP, how it feels. I've been playing a lot of games, I've been talking to a lot of people. One person in particular is a guy called Boby DK. I've put his Twitch links down below. If you want to check him out and see what he's about, see what he's saying, go watch him live on Twitch. He's an incredible player, absolutely incredible, so go check him out. Before I begin, I'd like to give a massive shout out to Trep for doing my UI. It looks fantastic. It looks so clean. It looks so wonderful. He put in a lot of hard work for this and I really appreciate it. If you want to check him out, he also streams. So I put a link to his Twitch channel down below in the description. So go check him out. Go give him a follow. Alright guys, so let's just get into it. Let's look at the changes from BFA going into Shadowlands for Death Knight. So one of the things that has been a massive change for all Death Knight specs is the ability to raise dead. That is an ability that gives you a little minion that you have on the side. For Frost and Blood, does a little bit extra damage, nothing more than, you know, a pretty sort of useless pet. For Unholy, it is bread and butter. It is the part of our kit that makes us so strong, and it synergizes with a lot of conduits, a lot of legendaries, and it's such a great, and obviously talents as well, but it's such a great ability, and obviously pet management is a big part of Unholy if you are looking to pick it up. Following on from this one is my new favorite ability going into Shadowlands, a new ability for all Death Knights. I find it so fun. It is one of the best things they've added. I think it's such a great way of changing up how Death Knights do their healing. It's a 2-minute cooldown, so it's quite long, but what you do is you sacrifice your ghoul to deal 1.3k shadow damage, obviously that's dependent on your gear and stats, to 8 nearby enemies and heal for 25% of your maximum health. This is a big cooldown and it gives you a lot of healing. For me at the minute, it's about maybe 5 to 6k depending on, you know, how things go. It is really great way to get a lot of HP back, especially as everything's quite bursty. Another really cool ability that is baseline that is great for PvP is anti-magic zone. Now obviously they changed it back in BFA when it was a PvP talent. It did 80% damage reduction for spell damage. Now it's only 20%, but you can make it 80% again with a PvP talent, so very easy to do. But baseline, this means in PvE, in anything you do, if you need to take a different PvP talent, you've still got something. 20% is still enough to stop life and death situations. You may be able to survive that way, so it's a really great ability. Now that it's baseline, it's absolutely fantastic. Another big swap that they did is they made Epidemic baseline for Unholy. They took that off the talent bar and I'm going to be showing you why in a minute, but this is the best ability for doing a lot of spread AoE pressure in PvE. Even in PvP, if you're going into battlegrounds and they are all stacked up, just press this button when you've got runic power. It is such a great way of just doing spread damage. For those of you who are a little bit more old school and played WoD, it's very similar to how Fire Nova worked with Enhanced Shaman. You spread the dot over and then you press that button, you just spam it as much as you can. Obviously you need runic power for this one instead, but the spread damage is incredible. It does have a cap on it. I think it's about 8 at the minute, but still, I mean, you know, 8 is about as maximum as you're going to get for RBGs. I really recommend it. It's such a great ability and such a great way of doing a lot of range damage and just spreading a lot of damage across the people from afar if you need to be doing that. This brings me straight on to Unholy Pact as a talent. This is talent that is that comes from a BFA Azurite trait that has been brought over and just replaced with Epidemic where Epidemic was. It's such a great ability. It is baseline. It is it makes your Dark Transformation that much more scarier. Essentially, Dark Transformation creates an unholy pact between you and your pet, igniting flaming chains that deal 4k damage over 15 seconds to enemies between you and your pet. Now that tick is quite strong. It's often maybe your number 2, number 3 damage during arena games, at least in a minute on skirmishes. But the biggest thing is that it increases your strength by 5% whilst active. That is big. You hit hard, and that is a less than a minute cooldown, because Death Coil, when you use it, obviously resets the cooldown of Dark Transformation by 1 second per Death Coil, so it is always less than a minute, a very short cooldown, and it synergizes so well with a lot of conduits that buff the damage by 4%, and legendaries that just increase it by another 12. So the damage is huge, and it is really vital to your kit. So we've spoken about the changes. Now let's talk about the pros. The pros of playing Death Knight, I think personally, outweigh a lot of the cons. You do so much damage, AoE damage, you just cleave things so hard. When you pop everything, it does so much damage. This brings me on nicely to our Necrolord Covenant ability called Abomination Limb. You do so much damage with it. It sprouts out, it has such a cool animation that it deals 5k damage over 12 seconds to any nearby enemies. Every second it pulls an enemy in, but obviously that can't happen once every 4 seconds, but they have to be within an 8-yard radius of you to do that. It is such a great ability. You literally keep people on you. You are cleaving with your Abomination, you're cleaving with Dark Transformation, Unholy Blight, you're doing so much AoE damage, and on top of that you are slamming the Festering Wounds, you're pressing Clawing Shadows or Scourge Strike, you're pressing Festering Wounds, you're doing Unholy Assault, you're using Apocalypse, you are absolutely battering them and they cannot get away from you. Your stick to targets is incredible. Couple that with Death's Advance, so you can't be slowed or knocked back, and just general sort of death grip mechanics. It's hard to get away from you. Chains of Ice is one of the strongest slows in the entire game. It is really, really good. So sticking to targets is a massive plus for Death Knights. Another massive positive of playing Death Knight is the defensive that you have on your arsenal. Icebound Fortitude is, whilst on a long CD, it is one of the best defensives. You get a 30% damage reduction for 8 seconds, but you also become immune to stuns. This is like a second trinket. If you are playing human, you have your get out of stun, human racial, you have relentless that obviously makes that less time you sit in CC, but you've also got Icebound, which you can use to get out. Now obviously with it being a long cooldown, maybe not the best to use it as a second trinket, but sometimes if you're going up against rogues, or at least how the meta is at the minute being so bursty, it is often better to stop that initial damage for as long as you possibly can, especially as sub-rogues now will cheap shot you, kidney shot you. They'll try and do multiple different CCs, and if they can't do that, they are not putting damage out and you are destroying their face or healing off them. Anti-Magic Shell as well is a crazy ability. Obviously, as you can see at the minute, I've paired mine up with some legendaries and my talents as well to make it really, really strong, but this is a great way for casters not be able to hit into you. When you press that up, it's only a minute cooldown as well. That is not very long. You are able to stop magic damage on you, and a lot of the classes at the minute Covenant abilities are spell damage. Echoing Reprimand from rogues is arcane damage, that is spell damage. You can stop that. Lots of these abilities you stop with Anti-Magic Shell, as well as obviously Anti-Magic Zone. With DKs, you also got multiple interrupts, you've got multiple stuns, you stun with Pet, you've got your Asphyxiate, which is obviously another 4-second stun. Mind Freeze is a 15-yard interrupt, so you can be away from someone and still interrupt them. It is shorter than you think though, so do be careful if you are used to playing a class like Shaman or Mage, which has a longer range kick. Make sure that you are used to the 15-yard range, because sometimes that can be difficult when you're planning to kick someone. You also got an interrupt with your Pet when you use Dark Transformation. Leap instead becomes a charge, and they interrupt spellcasting for 2 seconds. It can really take people off by surprise, so making sure you get used to how you use your Pet is really important. Obviously, we've spoken about Death Knight healing with Sacrificial Pact, giving you 25% of your HP back. But if you take a look at Death Strike as well, it is a great ability. Any of the damage that is done to you within 5 seconds, they take about 20% of that. It says 40% on the tooltip at the minute, but that is because we are outside of arena. Within PvP situations, it is 20%. That was a nerf, and I think a change that they did back in BFA. But you get a lot of HP back. It is about 3 to 4k. With the PvP talent transfusion, you get an even better way of giving yourself healing. I really recommend this for 2v2. Generates 20 runic power and then reduces the cost of Death Strike to about 50% for 7 seconds. You can just spam it as long as you've got the runic power to do it. I recommend making sure that you think in advance. Press it when you've got maybe 70 runic power, so at least then you can kind of keep up with it and just keep spamming Death Strikes to reduce the damage incoming. All right, let's look at the cons. Now, obviously, I said before the cons are very small. There's 3 major ones that I can think of that are probably going to be difficult for you. Number 1 is mobility. Now, I said that Death Knights can keep on a target, they can bring you back, but if they're in roots, it is very, very difficult. Rooting a Death Knight keeps them stuck there. They have no way of getting out there. The only ability that is able to stop that is Wraith Walk. Now, Wraith Walk is on the same talent tree as Spell Eater, which is a big buff to your anti-magic shell. I recommend taking that most of the time just because you go up against a lot of different classes that use a lot of magic damage. But for example, if you're going up against a hunter, you could use Wraith Walk as a way to get out. But again, a minute cooldown, otherwise you are stuck in roots. Mobility is a big problem for Death Knights. Another major problem is the way that you do healing. You have to use Death Strike in order to heal. You have to be on a target. You have to have a main hand weapon. If you're going up against a warrior, for example, and they disarm you, or a Windwalker, of course, and they disarm you, you cannot heal. You are stuck for however long that is, that disarm. It is going to be stuck. You're stuck in there, unable to do any healing at all. Even if you're going up against another melee target and you're trying to hit them, you have to go up to them to do some healing. The only other option you have is Sacrificial Pact, where you get rid of your pet. But if you, for example, press Dark Transformation, that ends it prematurely. So it's quite a tough matchup with figuring out how you're going to heal yourself. Obviously, the healing is quite strong and you have a lot of defenses, but sometimes it's better just to run and wait out for anti-magic shell or other things that will give you some healing. The third thing, and I think this is mostly important for players that are new to pet classes, using your pet is tough. You have to use a lot of extra keybinds. You've got to be able to, for example, using that leap stun in Dark Transformation, it has to be at a certain range. It cannot be up front and in melee with your target. So, for example, if you're doing it to a focused target against maybe a healer, perfectly fine. But if you want to do it to someone that you're attacking, you have to be able to use a move to function, move them out of the way, and then be fast enough for them to get back in and use the leap to interrupt. That's a very difficult mechanic. Using pets is tough, and I think for those who are looking to start it and don't have that experience, it can be really difficult. But again, with everything, practice makes perfect. I don't think these cons are massive. I genuinely think Death Knight is so much fun to play. It's almost like a slightly ranged melee caster. It is incredible, and I really, really enjoy it. All right, guys, that is everything. I've given you my initial thoughts. We went over the changes. We had a look at the pros. We had a look at the very few cons. In conclusion, I genuinely love Death Knight. I've really fallen back in love with the class. It is so much fun to play, and it's a really nice change from Shaman as well. I may do a Death Knight, an Unholy Death Knight guide at some point, so if you want that, please do let me know. I'll talk about legendaries, everything, and walk you through some tips and tricks. But otherwise, go follow me on Twitter, guys. Like and subscribe to this video. If you have any questions, message me down in the comments below. Ask me on Twitter, more than happy to help. If you really want to support the channel, go check out my Patreon. It would really help out and keep me going. Otherwise, guys, I will catch you in the next video. See ya.